You're mute and invisible. Hello.
I'm here. I'm here.
Lurking.
Oh, there we are. Someone wanted to meet you.
Someone wanted to meet. I can't see.
I thought I turned it on. No, there we are. Yes, Goza wanted to meet you. She heard such wonderful things about you. She wanted to say hello.
So beautiful. So beautiful. She looks like a fox. What's the name of this breed?
Shiba Inu.
Shiba Inu. So it's a Korean.
It's a Japanese dog. SHIBA-INU. They were actually bred to be hunters. Even though they're small, they were bred to hunt wild game like boars and bears and boar and bear and
serious stuff.
Ducks. Yeah, so she's about 9 kilos, 9 or 10 kilos, but
that's not too much. So that's quite petite, right? So beautiful. So. Oh my God, I'm so jealous. Super jealous. Although I do realize that living with a dog, and in case you ever want to leave Korea, you know, that part is
it's a little more complicated, but it's better having her. I have someone to to chat with. She doesn't argue.
That's a plus. Plus, she creates a routine, and I think dogs are just so grateful, and they're just, you know, I'm super biased, obviously.
I know you like dogs, so I thought you would like to.
That's a very well secret, isn't it? I mean, kind of all over the place, but I think I'm kind of also crazy because I don't have one now. So that's I'm waiting to settle in the States and then kind of stabilize our situation. I told you how that's coming. It's so important, and I so love dogs, and I'm biased. So thank you for introducing her to me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for sending the homework. I just got it like an hour ago or so.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
I read through it. I loved a lot. So it definitely kind of gave a kickstart to this day.
Okay.
You know, the material itself is often laughable, and your comments are funny. So I was like, this is hilarious on many levels. And a lot of the items, I mean, they're not much worse than industry average items, unfortunately, but some of them are still hilarious because they're surreal. So the way they are worded is often awkward and not natural, and you pointed that often in many cases. Some of the options are surreal, are super, and that's my kind of humor. So I love kind of this robotistic thinking, robotistic talking, which is all good in a comedy show. But when it comes to a language test, it's a whole other situation, how we are misleading students, how we're confusing them, how the fairness and validity of such exams and items is kind of questionable. So I'm gonna take more time over the weekend and really comment on your comments and add some extra ones, because you picked up on a lot of issues already, and I was super happy to see that. So that's a sign that we've been kind of noticing things, and a couple others were arising for me as well. So we could kind of look at the first 2 pages together, if we are okay with that, and start with that.
I'm sure you can find more problems than I did, and I'm sure since I started working with you, I've become less generous when it comes to things that I probably would have been forbearing on in the past. But I've always known that there were at least some basic problems, including especially the inclusion of Congolish, like, I, I don't think there were any specific examples on these tests, but Koreans notoriously ask, what is your hobby? Which should be, what are your hobbies? Do you have any interests? In the plural form, just like, you know, I read books, I like dogs. And it seems like every semester there's at least one
item
question written by teachers, not to correct, but to answer, what is your hobby? And you just undoing what I've been trying to, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's, I don't know why teachers are doing that, but anyways.
And some of them are native speakers as well, but
no, all of them are. That's the rumor.
So I don't even know who these secret people are who are writing the tests. Well, even if they are native speakers, maybe they have been in Korea for years or decades, and they are adapting. That's a psychological tendency we have. We want to fit in, and sometimes that means that we start imitating the errors because we want to fit in, and I think that might be at play here in some of the items.
Possibly, but I mean,
giving them the benefit of the doubt, you know, not lack of. So this is benefit of the doubt, because I'm assuming they would know better if they went back home to the States or wherever they're from.
Well, I mean, this isn't the 1970s. All you have to do is go on Netflix and you can, or YouTube, and maintain, or Skype with your mother or whoever. I mean, it's not, I understand what you're saying, and you're being
generous as well,
merciful, but
yeah. Just on the topic of mercy, Jeff, too. So you just said that since we started working together, you've been becoming a bit less generous. So the point is that we can still be kind, and and you're such a kind person, and I'm sure you're such a kind and encouraging teacher, and you should keep that. And just the fact that you're, you know, becoming more conscious, and when you do the delta, you will be extra meticulous about your own way, about your own teaching. That doesn't mean that when you're working with students, you should lose that, you know, these qualities that you have. So it's not a contradiction. It's not just because somebody is like, I see what's going on there, you know, like some serial items, some serial options, and just a serial scene entirely. But I wouldn't want to take it out on students. So it can be done, just to encourage you to keep on thinking, keep on reflecting, keep on becoming more aware, because it's not going to make you a monster. I don't think.
No.
So that's good news. I'm going to share my screen to look at this mess on my computer. No, it's better if we look at just one or two pages, briefly commenting on, and this is actually good practice because I really haven't had much of a chance. So it's really just kind of, you know, improvised, and we will go deeper once I have had a chance to really check things more thoroughly and have written up my notes as well. So just in terms of the table of contents, this was not your homework, but I thought it's a good point. Nevertheless, in case you ever become a course book writer, or in any form, maybe not in this traditional form, because this era is kind of over soon, I think. But just, I think there is a lot of repetitive bullet points, especially in the skills building column. And because I haven't seen the book, because I haven't, thankfully, this was a really good test of how good this table of contents were, in the sense that when I looked at reading and writing, so a lot of word count could have been saved by, especially by omitting and writing it, or and answering some questions, So I would have edited just and taken out what was extra, and that could have gone into exemplifying. That's what's sorely missing from this table of contents. It's really lacking examples. And when a novice teacher especially looks at a table of contents, they, some of these fancy grammar terms that I'm also learning here, the predicative, what was the other use of adjective?
Attributive?
Yeah, that thing. So just show me what you mean. Again, show me how. Show me an example. And then I'm like, oh, that thing. Okay, now I know what's going to be happening in this unit. So much like a novice teacher opening the book for the first time, I didn't have the chance to open it in this situation, and I would have really benefited from seeing some examples in all the columns, really. So that's a key thing I noticed. Yeah. I'm just looking for superfluous, because I'm a huge fan of taking out stuff as well. And honestly, now that I'm rereading my books, my IELTS books that I wrote a couple of years ago, I have so many run-on sentences. So these books will still have to be edited. And for my bootcamp, I'm gonna just really heavily chop things up, and because that's just a side note that I'm a huge fan of making it short, concise, to the point, simple, nothing running on. And instead of running on stuff, it's better to include examples. And
so you're saying it says listening as the section, then the description is listening to a quiz, so they keep repeating the words.
Listening, yeah, you could, that's a good point. So it could be, for example, you're listening to a conversation about listening, a conversation about a music festival, and you'd
reading and writing about a festival. Everything's redundant.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's got a lot of clutter.
A lot of, exactly. And like we've been talking a lot about clutter and just layout, and everything matters. Everything adds up to how accessible a material is, and one thing or the other is not a tragedy. So, but especially when you're setting up your own conventions, when you're writing materials or a test, or even your homework, to me, sometimes we can be really judicious about just in terms of one example. And this is minor, but it put a strain on me as a reader. When you say question 6 or your comment number 6 referring to question 15, and then later on you're also saying comment 5 regarding question 15, or 18 regarding question, 17 regarding question 32, see number 12 above. I got so confused. So instead of maybe the 17, if you put a bullet point here,
okay,
this is maybe,
so there are fewer numbers,
or judiciously used. So bullet point here, because there are so many numbers going on already that that would have helped. And instead of including, but this was to save time and all, but I'm just for future reference or in your own writing later on, I would include a screenshot of just the item here, and then include my comment below. And then you can say, see number 12 above, because then that's the only one number I'm seeing. Because here there is a bullet point instead of this, I'm seeing a screenshot of just the item in question. So this is just accessibility and user friendliness. A couple examples, and that applies to tables of contents in printed materials. They're not always super neat. Okay. I did like the titles, though. They really kind of give you an idea. So I'm majoring in biology. How often do you exercise? How many eggs do we have? So they at least they do orient you. If there is no other exemplification whatsoever, at least the titles and the topic where it says food or daily routines, they helped me a lot as someone who didn't have access to the book itself. Okay. You hit upon a lot of the key points. And I have a couple broader comments. One is that most of these items in this context, but in many other language learning contexts, unfortunately, are form-based. So if you notice, that the majority are grammar items to start with, so it's really not like 50% grammar, 50 vocab. So clearly this was a grammar syllabus, and clearly that's what we're gonna be hammering home in the exams as well. And within that, we are really mostly just checking if you learn the form right, dear student. So what's Matt doing on Saturday? He's watching, he won't watch, he didn't watch. This is all form, because watch and movie are the content words. So,
Right.
so if that tells the student, you know, the content already or the meaning, and then the rest they are asked to manipulate is just the form, which is again not a tragedy if we don't overdo it, or if you're at least aware of it. But most course books, most exams, most writers they're not so conscious, so that, you know, they're just imitating other items they have seen somewhere else within their own institution or in other course books or materials. So just as long as we are aware of this, that this is a 90% grammar-based exam, and even within that, it's heavily leaning towards form, testing form. And if we wanted to test meaning, often we would want to give a bit more context. So then the items wouldn't be standalone, but drag and drop, or, well, which is hard here, but because it's a paper-based thing, but not so much, because you can just have a box, and in the box there are 10 items, and then they just pick the right one for each gap, and then the verbs in the box are maybe new verbs they learned, but, you know, maybe then, so then in that case, that would be testing vocab, to be honest, because we are testing the meaning of those verbs. But if we set up if we write a short paragraph with time shifts in it, that make a difference. So by the time I got there, you know, my mom had already locked herself out, and the water had boiled over inside. This actually happened in my childhood, that my mom, we went somewhere and then she had forgotten the soup.
Yeah.
And then by the time we got home, we had been locked out for quite a few hours. The soup had been cooking and then boiled over and started burning, and we couldn't get in. And so there is a story there. There's
Right.
And then you could, you know, had boiled over, had evaporated. Maybe evaporated is quite high level. So again, judiciously thinking about those items, but then you can test meaning and not just form so heavily, you know, one by one after the other. So that was an overarching thing I noticed here.
Okay.
I agreed with your key comments on how a lot of the modeling of the target language is ridiculous and is robotic and not right. So that's spot on. I agree that some of the answers are ostensibly correct sometimes, because in real life, yeah, we use language a bit more creatively. And for example, number 8, why did you go? What did you do in Australia? Sorry. In real life, if you're talking to a friend, you could say, well, you know, my grandmother went sailing, and implying that then I went after her or went to visit her.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that's just a pragmatic issue with some of the items. Or pragmatics clashing with the form-based intentions of the item, because number 8 clearly is again a form-based thing. What did you do in Australia? So kind of the question is leading you to look for the option using the past simple, but in real life, in actual real life use, I could imagine A being correct in a way. You'd add some comments perhaps, but
Well, yeah, you could mean Fatima, or it could mean your family, like
Yes,
you're
as
saying.
well. Yes, as well. Yeah, so well, she went sailing and we accompanied her. There you go. So A
Yeah.
is perfectly fine. So that's just yet another example of how meticulous this item writing business, as we say in Spanish, is. Yeah, don't get me started on the open questions. So closed ones, these multiple choice ones are easier to write, and still they are not doing a tremendous job of it, are they? But open questions are much harder to write, because then you really have to think, much like when you're writing a freer practice exercise,
Right.
really are forced to think very carefully about what you're eliciting. And there is some awareness of this in the item writer's mind when they ask a question about Australia, and then they say you must answer using the passive voice, and I was like, oh, later on in one of these. So that's lazy as item writing, and that's sloppy writing,
Yeah.
and artificial and prompting artificial use, because in real life nobody gets to tell anybody what. That's compelled speech, as Jordan Peterson, a very conservative Canadian
Yeah.
psychologist, was in a huge free
Yeah.
speech scandal, and I'm liberal, but not so crazily much. And I like to always hear what the other side is saying, and he's talking a lot about how you don't get to say what I'm
Yeah.
going to speak.
I've watched a lot of his videos.
So I agree with him, and in items saying you must use the past perfect, immediately the rebel in me arose. And secondarily the item writer saying that's just bad writing, that's just bad item writing. So change one word to make the sentence correct. To drive a car, you might get a license. How long have you been watching this show? That's a form-based. So okay, so this is an error correction exercise. So it's not an open writing one. Oh, I had a comment about 12. What do you think is my problem with 12?
She doesn't like to eating onions, does she? Well, they're looking for the students to correct the verb to eat onions or eating onions. But what do you not like about it? She doesn't like eating onions, does she?
What did we try to teach with this language originally? Was it 2 plus verb plus infinitive, or also like plus, so the ing bit, or what was the actual target language originally in the lesson?
It was probably tag questions. It was probably the unit on tag questions.
Yes. So are we testing that?
No, they're testing verbs plus gerunds or infinitives.
Yeah. So that's not a good item, because tangentially we are kind of flashing the target language up a little. Like, dear student, remember you've seen does she, can she kind of sentences in the lesson. But this is an exam, this is a test. So if we want to check whether they learned that, then you would write an item saying she doesn't like eating onions, can she? Or she doesn't like eating onions, will she? Or she doesn't like eating onions,
Okay.
does he? Any of these would have done the job of checking form of tag questions. This is still very restricted, if you ask me. But it's better than this, because this is not even testing what we are trying to do here.
or it might have been to test the use of verbs plus gerunds or infinitives, and they just threw in a tag question.
And that's not fair then,
Right.
because that was new language as well. I do remember that. Look at item 4. There's a tag question happening there as well. So clearly, this was happening in the unit, and then we don't wanna kind of dump so much on them in one item.
Yeah,
That's not standalone enough.
that's a
and
good point.
not fair. Yeah, so this is random. I'm just browsing, and there is so much to comment on, honestly.
Just one page.
Yeah, exactly. And you had a lot of amazing comments. We'll check them in a second. Here's this. Write about the job, write about your hometown, write about an exciting experience. Which of these three, from your memory, Jeff, because you know the material better than me actually, which of these 3 topics was actually dealt with at length, really dealt with in the unit? Do you remember?
Well, those are 3 of the 6 units that were covered prior to the test. So there were just 3 topics.
And are they all covered? Jobs in general, and kind of tangentially.
Yeah, there's one unit on jobs. I'm not sure hometown, what that's about, or an exciting experience. It might have been for the present perfect. It would be 7 through 12.
Oh, sorry.
So, so have you already tried it? That would be an exciting experience.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, then I don't see the job thing, but other than that, it's not too bad then. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
haven't paid too much attention to the books in years. I just
Mhm.
do my own thing, but yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, then let's say that question 2 and 3 are acceptable because they are eliciting or giving students an opportunity in a freer fashion to kind of write about these topics. But item 1 is still not ideal because it's very open.
Yeah.
Don't see that topic anywhere. All 3 items are too open, if you ask me, because
Yeah.
the more open we leave things for them, the more like
They have to waste time thinking about what to
yeah,
do.
yeah, and then to generate ideas, and it's bad enough that they have to write and do so many things in this foreign language. If our questions are at least interesting, then it will trigger ideas maybe in Korean first, and then at least that cognitive demand is not on them to kind of do our job. We did a good job writing interesting and exciting and personalized and unique and strange even questions. Therefore, we put it on them. Like, write about the job. I don't care. Go. It's so mean, so mean to kind of just leave it so open because it's dead boring. And then if I don't write an exciting and fancy answer, teacher, then it's my fault. Well, that's really not fair if you ask me. So I would swap the first one entirely, and the other 2 I would kind of make it somehow more interesting.
Okay.
And interesting usually just means more concrete. If you make something more concrete, it already becomes more relatable. Like, write about your hometown. If you say what's one key thing you hate about your hometown, now we're talking. What's one thing you think is unique about your hometown compared to other towns in your country, or compared to other towns in the world that you've seen on the internet? Maybe that's if you haven't traveled. So
Yeah.
those are more concrete. And I know that the more concrete we go, the risk also arises that people will not have an idea about that specific thing. But I would argue that we have that problem with very open questions as well, where we're just leaving things up to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of them don't have very much life experience. They're, 18 years old. They haven't been outside of Busan.
Yeah. So then, but they do have internet, right? And they are
Yeah.
big on YouTube
Yeah.
and so that's a very good point. I love how empathetic you are always. And that's our job indeed, to bear in mind their reality, their lives, their language learning realities embedded into their lives. And even within that, we can refer to, like on what, compared to what you've seen on the internet, or compared to what is a dream destination for you that you'd like to go to once, or that's becoming a bit too fancy for the level, but you get the idea that the assumption here perhaps that the more generic I leave it, the easier it will be. I would just there's an ant walking through my desk, and I would just push back on that idea. That's my comment here. Okay, I agree with you about the instructions. But yeah, because look, if we've been teaching them in English only, or mostly in English, and at least the books are all in English only, so they will have been exposed to instructions in English only already. And if we design our exams using very similar instructions, very similar kinds of questions that they're already used to, then they are not going to be so challenging that they would be unfair. So again, this so often happens. If I did a poor job teaching stuff, or if I did a poor job, and then I'm putting it on the learner. I think that's what happens often.
Right.
When we're mixing L1, we are resorting to it because we don't trust that we've done a good job of sensitizing them to certain recurring instructions that they will have heard for half a year or for a semester. They would know what they mean, what's expected of them as well. Yeah, so you were feeling that too many multiple choice, which is monotonous. So that's just the item type could be more varied. But then things are a bit harder to measure. So unless you really have enough item writing experience, including sometimes mathematical or statistical, it can get tricky. And therefore, often in contexts, there is this tendency to just use one or two types because that feels safer to measure, and that's understandable.
Another factor is that, well, prior to the coronavirus, the CBT, computer-based TOEIC, was a requirement for well, all of the English classes except for the TOEIC classes, but meaning they're already taking multiple choice English tests that are, worth 20% of their grade. So why are we giving them another test that's mostly multiple choice? It doesn't make, it's just, to me, it's redundant. We should actually be testing their writing.
And monotonous, yeah, such a good point. That there is more to a language. Oh my God, there is more to a language than just answering hundreds of multiple choice questions in a semester, both in the classroom and when I'm being tested. And most of them on grammar, and most of them on grammar form. Do you see how small a fraction that is of what language is and what language learning, and therefore testing, which should go hand in hand? And so you are feeling this too. and I'm just helping you kind of clarify what you're feeling there. That it's
Right.
not, it's super repetitive in terms of form, as in item form, or item type, rather. And it's therefore not so valid, because I'm sure that the aim here isn't to churn out hundreds of people who can answer multiple choice questions on English grammar forms, but to learn the language. And then in that case, this whole tendency is not quite right. No correct answers is a big issue. So when an item doesn't have a clear correct answer, or if an item has a clearly wrong answer, Jeff, you didn't
Okay.
pick up on that, but that is an issue I saw, and I was laughing my head off. Some of the answers are so surreal and are so clearly wrong that they would not be acceptable in proper item writing situations, because we are not trying to get the student to automatically eliminate anything without even having read the question or anything. That's not the idea. The idea is to really engage them. Yeah. I agree with you that in real life, we would say what was in the item. So that's again a clash between real life use, isn't it? And in course books, we teach that I've been here. What was the question? Let's just go.
There was, have you ever been to Japan? Have you ever been to another country?
Yeah.
Yes, I've been to Japan 3 years ago. No one would say that.
Not like that, right? So a native speaker.
I've been to Japan 3 times, or I went there 3 years ago, but not I've been to Japan 3 years ago. That's the whole point of the unit that this item is testing.
Yeah.
Is to get them.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I just pushed back a little bit. In real life, native speakers would say, yes, I've been to Japan, and then trailing off a little, and then starting kind of a new sentence, they would then add 3 years ago. But I agree with you, not within the same sentence, not even.
Yeah, you would say, I've been to Japan, I went there 3 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So this is not modeling correct use again. And that's really that's a big problem. So there are smaller issues here and bigger issues here, but this would really be a huge problem in a Delta lesson plan as well, or a Delta worksheet that you're giving out to your students. Yeah, again, how long have you been studying English?
I don't think what they have there is wrong, but I think the progressive feels a little bit better.
It's wrong because I think it's wrong. I think it's with
how long have you studied English? It just doesn't feel right. It just
no, because we know that language learning of all activities is a lifelong thing, and it.
How long have you lived here? How long have you worked here? That would work, but how long have you studied English? It just sounds
completed, and
yeah, it needs the progressive. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. So yeah, and the options are equally. Yeah. So just modeling correct use is super important. In the sentences below. Part 2, there are often different ways to correct the same sentence, so it would be better to have instructions that said.
I have an error in that sentence. Essentially, it should say correct the errors in the sentences below. I have an error there.
Sorry, correct the errors. And okay, part 2, change one word. And some of them had more problems, you see.
Yeah.
For example, in which one was there more than one word? Not talking about 12, because that's wrong. That's badly.
I'm just saying in general that there are often different ways to
Mhm.
correct
Yeah.
sentences like these.
Yeah. So again, we are being super aggressive when we are forcing the learner. So instead of being super forceful in our instructions, that's just my general comment on all this, and then we move on. Instead of being forceful in our instructions, we need to write better items. We really
Okay.
thought of ones that triggered just the right answer, just the one thing that I wanted to trigger. It's on me, not on them. And if I can't achieve it authentically, the solution is not to be kind of like, you must use the passive voice. And you, who are you to tell me that? So, yeah. Okay. Yes, I agree that capitalizing anything. But then again, maybe, we could argue that this was done on purpose to kind of help them get started at least. So if again, I'm not a mind reader, I don't know the item writer. If this was their thinking that I'm gonna give away the first word because this exercise is so hard already, I don't mind helping them a little bit with this, then it's fine. Other than that, yeah, it's a good point just to be conscious of this. Yeah, and again, language. Will they borrow? Is reinforcing the error already so common, as you say, the interference error between Korean and English, so that's not useful at all. Yeah. Write 5 sentences. Yeah, so you see how this is my sacred cow post on LinkedIn, exactly that, it's already a problem in your context that Korean learners just write in a way that doesn't gel. And I know this as an item writer, therefore I don't even dare ask for a paragraph because I know they're not gonna write one. So, and then I'm just giving up on them entirely. And I'm just saying, look, I know you're stupid. I know you can't write a paragraph. Just write 5 sentences, please. So that's not ambitious enough. I think we should be saying, write a
Aim
paragraph.
high.
Aim high, demand high. Chances are they're gonna write 5 very standalone, not very cohesively. But
It
maybe
doesn't, sorry.
that's I was just ranting and rambling on and on about the same thing. That just because it's likely not going to happen yet, it doesn't mean we should reinforce that it's impossible going forward.
And it doesn't take much effort or time to get most of them to understand how to write a paragraph. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
It just has to be told to them explicitly and
Yeah.
reinforced a little bit. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
I mean, some of them still don't get it, but most of them do.
Yeah, a little bit of cohesion.
Yeah.
A little, and one sentence that's clearly your topic sentence, and that's it. There's your paragraph. So exactly, it's not even so super ambitious. I agree with you. Yeah. Still improvising here. I'm just checking if there is anything. So the same thing, it's the same series, isn't it? So lots of redundant stuff going on in the skills column. Not enough exemplification especially in the language focus column. So it's not useful enough for a teacher to look at this scope and sequence and say, we'll be going to and be about to. I would like to see a sentence right under it to help me much faster. Okay. Same comment. And I was a bit kind of like third conditional in B1 level. That's maybe just introducing it, at the end of the course. And I was like, that's a bit ambitious, but okay.
Yeah.
Depends how. Anyway, I don't like my sister. I have I'm wishing, I wished, I wish, I will wish. Again, form. This is all about form because
Yeah,
wish is the content word. So if they know the meaning of wish, then they know the story here. That this is an unhappy sibling. And beyond that, it's a grammar exercise and the form, an item testing form only. Okay. I'm just, you know what, I'm looking for one that made me laugh because
yeah.
let's see if I find any here. Oh yeah, 6. I love 6. I think fundraiser is an important quality in someone identity. This made me laugh because this is an example of obviously wrong distractors.
Yeah, right.
And what makes a distractor less obviously wrong is if they are of the same grammatical category, if they are of the same lexical set. But maybe, so yeah, definitely not so far off from one another because then it's just crazy. I think the internet is an important quality in someone and it is clearly wrong too. And it's changing the form too, because the other 3 items are one word long without articles. And this is the only one with an article. That's not okay in item writing either. You need to have roughly the same word count, the same kind of answer, so that it's not an exercise of what's obviously wrong here, even without necessarily reading the question. I could already eliminate it. Yeah, 9 made me laugh. If you go to a buffet, there is a variety of food to climb, to conquer, to do. So, but beyond that, it's not such a bad item because at least it's testing meaning, and that was a welcome and change. It's testing meaning of lexis. Well, maybe it didn't want to, but that's what it's doing. I think it didn't want to actually now that I remember the table of contents, because it's a 2 plus infinitive. Food to eat, people to see, things to do. I think that was the grammar here. So
Yeah,
so then it's not doing that. It's testing the meaning of climb and conquer and eat, I think. You see, wow, that's a big issue with this item. I was just praising this item, saying, this is, I mean, other than how it's funny, but at least finally it's testing meaning. And then I remembered that, yeah, but it wasn't written with that in mind, and then it's not good. Okay, and 8 was funny too. Italy population, Italy.
yeah.
So A is clearly wrong because it's a noun and all the others are verbs. We cannot do that. Yeah. It made me laugh as well. I do remember that. I liked your comment on she sings on number 15. How
Yeah.
again not modeling correct use.
Right.
Right. He loves movies. His dream is a movie star. I love this. This made me laugh out loud. I needed it. I'm so tired. And it helped me wake up because
Number 12.
number 12, his dream is to clean a movie star.
Wow.
Or to take a movie star. In what way are we talking? To clean was just so bizarre that I just burst out laughing. I do remember. And again, what is the purpose here? If we're trying to test the 2 plus infinitive grammar, like when we do things for a purpose, I don't know what that grammar is called officially, sorry. Let me just cheat. Where was that? the verb plus object, is it that one?
Plus-
No. Is it this one too, plus infinitive? I think it's
Adjectives and I can't remember.
adjectival and adverbial phrase. Nobody says adjectival, but I think it's this grammar. Do you think?
There's so much to do.
I think that's
It could be, yeah.
so. Let's say that's the grammar we are trying to test here, and then that's not what we are doing at all, because if we are testing vocab of clean, take, rest, and be.
Right.
If we wanted to test 2 plus and so much to do, movie stars to clean or meet, then we'd be playing around with the form, and we would say his dream is to meet a movie star, his dream is meeting a movie star, his dream is meets, and
Yeah.
his dream is met a movie star, and then we are testing what we just taught, to be
Right.
fair, and then it's an acceptable item. I loved 18 because in pragmatic terms, again, a lot of them are acceptable. What did the interviewer say when you arrived? And then, well, I asked her what she was, and then we started talking. So I could, in real life, A could be the start of the answer.
Okay, yeah.
And what's going on with options B and D? So I don't see the purpose of the item overall, because are we testing the meaning of say?
I think it was reported speech.
Yeah, I thought so, but it's not happening. What is happening instead is just testing the meaning of say. Because what did she say when you arrived? She said that she was... So, well, recognizing reported speech, okay, it does do that, but it's a very unambitious aim for an item. Because yeah, of all 4 items, that's the only one that includes reported speech at all. So okay, but that's not very ambitious, is it? Okay. I love 19. I was thinking of how I'd speak like that. So I would say, hello, you help us move this weekend? Like your friend, I would totally say that. And again, just from Ken's auxiliary lesson, could you help? Well, may you help? It doesn't sound right, no, to be fair. Okay, so that's not... I was just gonna start on my other hobby horse of how you can, there has to be one correct answer, and that's true of planning a lesson and picking our target language items. And if we notice that they're going to be interchangeable, we need to think more carefully, like it didn't happen in that lesson about auxiliaries. I liked your comment on 21, how it's 2 robots talking, the AI really took over. Yeah. 20 isn't modeling real use in real life. Again, this is 2 robots again. Why did you go to the theaters early? Oh, well, to get a good seat. Would be the answer. Not repeating the I went. I hope to be a teacher is not a good distractor. You tell me why.
Well, it's obviously not related to the question. It's too easy. It would be better if it were
And it's,
related to the
yeah,
topic with an
yeah.
error in it.
And if it also looked like the rest of them,
Yeah, it's the only one that doesn't start with I went.
yeah. Much as we hate I went, because we just said it's not quite natural, but still, I think it stands out super clearly, and it shouldn't. Okay. Someone vomit. I love this one. It made me laugh so hard. Someone vomited their notebook on the table. I was like, what's going on here? And I wasn't sure what the grammar aim of this item was. What was it testing? Do you know from the unit?
Probably just the simple past.
Uh-huh. Wow. And vomited is not really B1 vocab, I would argue, unless it was used in the units, which I doubt, because it's such a gross word.
Probably, and I can't remember, but sometimes the test makers just like to have fun more than they like to focus on doing their job, which they don't generally know how to do. But anyway.
They're not principled enough in the sense that they're trying to focus on the aim of the item, which they often fail at that, even at that. But then they think that it's okay to have the distractors coming from left field, from above level as well, from outside of the course book, outside of these contexts of job, hobbies, and you name it. I don't know what my hometown, or none of which will have taught vomited. I'm sure about that. So even for the distractors, we need to recycle items, preferably from the original context, for
Yeah,
the follow through on theme and follow through on target language. And it will more likely stay on level, which we also need to make sure is happening. I don't think vomited is A2 level vocabulary. I loved 24. It made me think of Star Wars and Yoda. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I do. There is that character that talks funky like this.
yeah, Yoda.
I was like, what's happening? I love 27. It made me laugh very hard. Shoes must be prosecuted at all times. Yeah, and again, questionable whether prosecuted, prohibited is A to B1 vocab, if you ask me, unless it was taught in the unit, which again is questionable. Why are you teaching prosecuted to B1 level learners? Typically, but okay.
Yeah, I knew you would find a lot more things than I found.
It's just, yeah, like, and I am kind, but I can be mean if I want to be. And honestly, when people are criticizing my stuff, or on the Delta, after Delta, with publishers, the first couple drafts I got back on this book, like using this one,
Yeah,
I wrote the listening in it.
yeah,
And I remember my editor just, kind of knocking me all over the place, and he was so right. And I was like, it was always dreadful to open his emails, but at the same time, I was like, I'm whatever is in there, I'm sure I'm gonna learn a lot.
yeah,
and I did. Yeah, it hurt sometimes, but that's that's the price. And if somebody bothers to give you feedback at all, that's my love language at all. So that
yeah,
just change the chip around feedback. And of course the tone matters, of course how it's worded matters, but it's something to be grateful for.
right.
There
It's how
is,
you grow.
yeah. So yeah, here's the, you must use the passive voice, like, write an appropriate answer for each question. Appropriate. You had an issue with appropriate. I agree with you. What's appropriate? In what sense?
How often do you use your phone to join a Zoom class? Once a week.
There is your appropriate answer, teacher. So appropriate, maybe they meant detailed, maybe they meant answer with a full sentence. And because I understand the context. Koreans are hard to, it's hard to make them talk or write. So I think that's where it's coming from again, but appropriate is not the right word because that's a register related technical term in a way. And I'm sure the item writer meant either long or detailed enough.
Well, we're generally not allowed to have conversations about the tests. I've been asking for years just to be able to proofread them before they go to the printer. And I won't bore you with all the details of the ugly business of being on committees, but just use your imagination. It's just be quiet and, like you've already alluded to in some of your situations, just
Shut up.
stay in line.
Stay in line, yeah. What? Yeah. Well, wow. Wow.
So
That's so annoying because, you know, when you're hired because you're a good teacher, because you, and they need your expertise and they are not capable of taking it or accepting it. So this is the same issue with feedback again.
yeah,
How receptive we can be on a
right.
personal level, on an institutional level, how porous, how flexible, how, and you can say, look, you know, it's like 250 kilograms of paper. It's a 5,000 learners and the exams are tomorrow. We can't do much about this, but thank you so much for your pointers. Can you write them up in bullet points for next semester? And here is the raise on your salary. That is the appropriate reaction. But
Normally we get the tests right before they're supposed to be administered, or a week or two. Now we get them a little bit earlier, when I've been saying we should get them at the beginning of the semester so we can all proofread them. It's not. But their concern is that somehow we'll leak them to the students and the students will be able to cheat, which is not a valid excuse in my mind. It's just, anyways, I will refrain my, I'll restrict, I'll avoid going on a rant, but.
Well, rant is just a synonym for, you know, conscious thinking. And
yeah.
So that's, the Delta wants you to rant. The whole thing you're preparing for,
yeah,
is an exercise in what's working, what's not working. So keep on ranting, I say. And I just carefully in your context, if you need a livelihood, etc. So we've had this conversation many times, but keep on ranting to me, to yourself,
to Gozo. Poor thing. But no, what you're talking about, having a mature